Hmm. All right, we're going holding by Pirke Avos, ethics of our fathers. Again, one walk one. Holding by Pirke Avos, ethics of our fathers. We are in chapter 2, Mishna 16. And it's going to be part 56, be part 57, part 58, part 59, I'm sure. Again, one walk one. Holding by Pirke Avos, ethics of our fathers. We are in chapter 2, Mishna 16, and we've been talking about the evil inclination because the Mishnah here says the name of Rabbi Yeshua, an evil eye, and we spoke what about the evil eye, the evil inclination, hatred of others, of other people, remove a person from this world. So I think we spoke a few weeks back about potentially even a benefit maybe of the evil inclination. Maybe it drives us to do good things, right? So certain types of jealousy are good; they're not necessarily bad, but I mean, a lot of negative things. Definitely a lot of negative things about well, the evil inclination, what it does. So another explanation here of the evil inclination is what is the Eitzar? What does the evil inclination want? The evil inclination prevents the person from serving God and keeping mitzvahs. Now, how's the evil inclination? How's the evil inclination do that? We're going to see. Whatever, we're going to see later. I don't know if we'll get to it tonight. But we'll see that what does the evil inclination want? The evil inclination may allow you, let's say during the month of Elul, let's say the evil inclination get you all excited, want you to make, all kinds of promises of things obviously you can't keep, right? Even though you have the right idea, even though you want to do the right thing, right? No question. Yeah, nonetheless, what happens? What happens? You get all excited, you get fired up. So what does evil inclination say? We've mentioned this before. What does evil inclination do? Evil inclination says, okay, go for it. Take on different things, whatever. Give you the month of Elul, right? Doesn't mean you're not going to have any trials and tribulations, but he says, a person will be encouraged. They want to be inspired. Very good. They want to change. They want to have a clean slate. Very good. Yeah. So they go through the month of Elul. Then you have the days of Rosh Hashanah, 10 days of repentance. You have Yom Kippur, right? The person's still, on a high, let's say. And then you come into Sukkot, right? Sukkot, you're going to sing and dance and this and that. The evil inclination says, great. Let you sing and dance. Let you have all kinds of fun. Again, doesn't mean he's letting his guard down over here, right? Then after Sukkot, you got Simchas Torah, right? The last holiday, which is really not part of Sukkot, right? You have Simchas Torah. And then after that, after all the singing and dancing, this and that, you go to the everyday, right? You go to the everyday, and then the evil inclination says, "Okay, I let you be introspective for a month. I let you go through the 10 days of repentance and Rosh Hashanah. I let you go through Yom Kippur. I let you feel like you were walking on air. Very good. I let you sing and dance on Sukkot. Very good. Yeah, I let you go through I let you go through Simchas Torah. Very good. Now you're mine. Now, whatever person took on, let's see. Right? Let's see where it goes. Let's see where a person is holding. So over here, what does the evil inclination do? The evil inclination wants to make life seemingly unbearable. right? Wants to make it very hard, but he wants to make you work that much harder in order to keep Torah mitzvahs, right? What's the goal, right? What is the goal of the evil inclination? The goal of the evil inclination is to stop a person from serving God, keeping mitzvahs. Now, this can come in many, many different ways, right? What does it focus on? What's the first thing it's going to focus on? It's going to do anything in its power for a person, or let's say better, to get a person to waste time. Now, wasting time can be in a lot of different forms, right? Wasting time, can be, let's say, people are news junkies, right? So they spend a lot of time, following the news or following sports or following other things, right? So those things are distracting. Now, it could be a good distraction. The news is never a good distraction, right? Because most of the news is always negative, right? Don't forget about all the Lashon Hara and everything else. It's usually negative, right? A lot of it's usually negative. Every once in a while, once in a blue moon, they'll tell you, a feel-good story, right? So, wow, it gives us, but more, belief, belief in humanity. Okay, very good. Very good. 99% of the stories are bad. They're negative, right? Most of them. So comes on the Ramchal. The Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, in the way of God, he says in the path of the just, says the same thing. He says this world is one big world of distraction, right? We said that, we've mentioned this many times, right? One major world of distraction. Okay. Yeah, we made it a world of distraction. Very good. We made it a world of distraction. So now comes on the evil inclination. And once you get involved in all these things that have nothing to do with Torah mitzvahs, just the opposite, it's going to take you away from Torah mitzvahs. And in the process, make your ability to keep Torah mitzvahs that much harder. Yeah, that much more difficult. Why? Because a person seeped into society, right? This is actually, a good thing for Hanukkah. What do the Greeks want? The Greeks, they made decrees. They made decrees against Jewish people. Very good. Yeah, they made decrees, but their goal was not to destroy them physically, right? That was the goal of Haman, right? Haman, Mr. Haman himself in the book of Esther, right? His goal was very clear: kill everybody, right? Genocide, right? Real genocide. You kill every single Jew, men, women, children, didn't matter, right? Because one Jew wouldn't bow down to him. Okay, but that was clear the goal. The goal was never make us like them. That was never Haman's goal. Never his goal. Now the Greeks came along. What'd they do? So with all their, schooling and enlightenment and worship of the body and sports and entertainment and and all that. So what do they get the Jews to do? What do they want them to do? Be like them? Oh, you tell me they made a number of decrees. Very good. They did make decrees. Okay, but that was not their goal. Their goal ultimately was to have the Jews be like them. Now, where's the wisdom? Where's the wisdom by the Greeks? Normally we say that the Greeks, in the Greek world, so to speak, right? In the language, the rabbis, what do they call it? They call it darkness. They call it darkness. Now, anybody knows anything about anything would say, what do you mean? What about arts? What about entertainment when it's, not forbidden? What about these other things? There are good things in the world they brought, right? Education system, what we have today is through them. The roads, aqueducts, right? All these things come from them. We're living in that Greek world. Now, someone will say, come on, this is fanaticism. This is fanaticism 101 or 101A. What do we say? What would a Jew say over here? Right? What would these old rabbis, what would they say? Right? What would they say? They say it's darkness. They look at it as darkness. But if they brought quote unquote lights of knowledge, so to speak, and worship of the physical body and other things, Why is that darkness? That's enjoying life, according to them. Right? That's enjoying life. What's the problem? Why can I enjoy life? And this question comes up all the time. Question comes up all the time. It's only so much story a person can learn before your brain explodes. Okay. Yeah, so what do I do when your brain is fried? Right? Now keep in mind one thing. That's probably not going to stop a person, but keep in mind one thing. What does King David say? King David says in the book of Psalms, very simple. He says, you're in this world 70 years. 70 years. That's how long a person should live. If you have strength, what does King David say? 80 years. Yeah, 80 years. Anything over that's a bonus. I see people live longer today. That's true. That's true. You see how they live their lives. So maybe they're not really living, but they live longer. Okay. He says you're not here in this world very long. So when we're young, we think we got the whole life in front of us. So I had this idea, which kind of bothered me for a long time. And I ended up following very simple, simplistic idea. My simplistic idea was, okay, what are we ingrained in? What gets ingrained in our head, especially, if you live in the States, probably other places as well, it's probably no different. Yeah, what's ingrained in our head? You go to school, what's the purpose of going to school? To learn, very good. So, you want to get good grades, very good. What's the purpose of getting good grades? So you get into a good college. Go to university, very good. Yeah, you go to university, what's the point of going to university? You get more knowledge, yeah. You graduate university, what's going to be? You'll be in the workforce. Now, right, without going into this, because I've spoken about it ad nauseum. Yeah, most people get a degree, do not use that degree, especially with a liberal arts degree. You're never going to use it. You go into different fields, but everyone says you got to have, you have to have a degree. Right? Probably one of the top 5 biggest lies, I would say within the top 10. Yeah, of the biggest lies that anyone's ever been told in the world. Yeah, but I've already spoken about that a lot. So what happens? So you're supposed to do good in college, you pay enough money for it, let's say, unless you're getting scholarships. So what's the point of college? To learn, right? What are you gonna do later? What are you gonna do next? Again, most people go to college to not use that degree for what they're gonna do. Some people do, a lot of people don't, doesn't matter. Yeah, at the end of the day, go in the workforce. Yeah, you're gonna work very good, and then maybe get married, you have a couple kids, maybe have a dog, maybe have someone plays somewhere. You retire, you go on vacation, see the world. If you're able to, if you're healthy, and then you die. Right? So that was my simplistic way of looking at the world. Now, I don't think that's changed, that much. I think today, I certainly think people, even if they go through that system, they want to, they want to work less and make a lot more money, right? Work ethic's gone way down, but okay. Now, let's say, for argument's sake, let's say we'll make a big leap of faith here. Let's say I'm right. Let's say the way I looked at the world is right. Yeah. Now, if that's the case, I had a very strong question. My question was, or I thought it was a question. Right. Well, before I get to the question, let's think of this model. I'm doing good in school, to go to a good university, so I can make a lot of money, maybe get married, which, institutional marriage is out the window today, but maybe get married, maybe have a few kids, whatever. You retire, you see the world. Right? That's the model. That is what certainly I thought, people can argue, right? That's definitely what I thought the model was. Yeah, very simple model. Now, is that what life's about? Now people say, what's important to people? Yeah, they'll say family. Well, unless you have problems with family, whatever, okay. Yeah. What's important? So people have values. Or do they have values? If it's not family, what are they living for? So you got, environmentalists out there, you got, people going after all kinds of different things. Yeah, that are important to them. They'll say, okay, like someone once told me, you like to pray all day, I like to play golf. Okay, if you break that down, that's not really a good analogy because I don't pray all day. Yeah, in the morning it take you 45 minutes, an hour, less, whatever it may be. Afternoon is 15 minutes. Evening service is 15 minutes. So, what are you talking? Hour and a half? Hour and 15 minutes, depending how fast you pray, right? So it's like, okay, you like to do this, I like to do that. I like to play golf. Very good. Is there any comparison? Yeah. You want to tell me that your meaning in life is playing golf? They say, yeah, that's my meaning in life. That's what I like to do. You like to pray, I like to do this. There's no comparison, but it doesn't matter. Right? It doesn't matter. Now, if I'm right, if my ideal, according to the way I saw it, is right, does that make any sense? They'll say you want to live your life your way, moral relativism, right? Morality is relative. You're okay, I'm okay. Just don't tell me what to do. You want to sit and pray all day and do all these funny rituals? Your choice. I want to do other things. Okay. Yeah, never the two shall meet. Maybe they won't. Very good. Okay. But think of this. Think of this. If you're looking at the world in that way, where's the meaning? Right? Everything's a means to an end. What's the means to an end over here? If I don't go to university, I don't do good in this and that, I'm not going to put food on the table. But that's certainly not true. What many people think go to university and make money? Right? They make money. Whatever. Like I said, I've spoken about that a lot. So, okay, maybe that's not true today. Maybe that's not true. People say I would never hire someone who didn't have a degree more than someone else. I don't know. Someone had more life experience. Yeah. And someone's like, wet behind the ears. Who are you going to take? They say I might want to train someone so I can pay them less. I'll take someone who's wet behind the ears. Okay. But they give this ideal of what a degree is, what it means and all that, where someone's got a lot more life experience to make your company a lot more money straight away. Yeah. So some people say, doesn't matter. I'll take the one with the degree. Okay. Yeah. But let's analyze now. I'm in kind of an analyzing mood right now. So let's analyze. That's what life's about. I got to do good, in order to get a job. It's a vicious cycle, right? I have to study, right? And I have to learn because what's that going to do? It's going to put food on the table, right? So then you go through all these different life experiences, different things. You have ups, you have downs, this and that. And what was the whole purpose? What was the whole purpose? To live, right? But essentially, what are you doing? You're chasing your tail. You're eating to live and living to eat. Very good. So where's the meaning? Where's the meaning? Especially if someone's going to work, 40, 50 hours a week, and obviously the Chosam Vava says, and he says the duties of the heart in the gate of the Emunah Bitach. When you got to do something you like to do. Because people are not going to stick at something, even if it's going to make them a lot of money, they don't enjoy it. It's not going to last. You got to pick something, that you enjoy. Right? If you don't pick something you enjoy, you won't do it. Right? You won't do it long term. Okay. So if you're thinking in these terms, so I had a question. Right? In other words, the person working themselves up the ladder, very good. Right? To go to school, go to college, very good. You make money, change jobs, whatever it may be. Everything's beautiful. What if you started out, your name was Rockefeller? Or your name was Getty, right? I still think they probably have plenty of money in their family. I don't think it's been gambled away. Yeah, let's say you won the game, right? If the whole game is that supposed to be good in school and all that, but what are we acquiring? What is the person acquiring? They'll say, "Hey, I'm acquiring a name. I want people to know who I am. I have what to say, whatever." Okay, what are people acquiring? They want money. They want money. They want prestige and everything that comes with it. They want to have a second house. They want to have fancy cars, fancy jewelry, fancy this. Right? Never ends. Right? Never ends. The person has 100, the Gemara says the person wants 200. You have 200, you want 400. It never ends. Okay. So if you're part of this cog in the wheel, so to speak, and you start at the top, your name is Rockefeller. Beautiful. Your name is Rockefeller. You won the game. But you have to go to college. They're just going to hand it to you. Or whatever. You go into the family business, let's say. So you won the game. 100%, you won the game. So what happened over here? Some people start out this way. Other people start out this, maybe some people start at the top. So then it made me think, if what's the purpose of life? What am I doing here? Is the purpose of life just to acquire things? Because when a person dies, yeah, we're all gonna die. Bad news, we're all gonna die. Yeah, at some point. What would a person want written on their grave? On the grave, on the gravestone. What do they want written? Acquired as much as possible. Saw the world. What do you take when a person dies? When a person dies, what do they take with them? Nothing. I think in Japan or China, one of these places, when people die, what do they do? Loved ones will put in like toy cars and toy credit cards, so like they think they use it, in that, in the next world. Yeah, good luck, right? Good luck to that. To find out the hard way, it's not. It's probably not the case. But in either case, what does the person take with them? The only thing a person takes with them in this world is what they've done. That's it. For good or for bad, right? In other words, they take their reputation, what they did, how they did things, how people remember them, right? So we got to think. We got to think, what do we want to be remembered for? I know of a story, a horrific story. Horrific story. I've told the story before. It's still a good story. Even though it's a horrific story, somebody dies, and they get a rabbi to he's going to make a eulogy. So he speaks to different people in the family, just to get a feel of who the person was. Yeah, so he's speaking to all these different people, and they all come up with a similar theme. Nothing good about this person. They have one thing good to say about the person. Now imagine this rabbi has to take this information. It's all negative, right? It's all negative. So he's got to take this information. He's got to take this information and somehow come up with something to say at the funeral. But this person was flabbergasted. Flabbergasted. Not one person in the family, either a spouse or kids, anybody this person spoke to, you don't have that much time for a Jewish funeral, usually, with a very short amount of time after death, at least. Certainly here, in Jerusalem, they don't want the body sit 24 hours. But other places it could be. Someone needs to travel to get there. They can hold the body, whatever it is. Not good for the soul. But either case, right? Either case, what happens? So what happened over here? This person, what's he gonna do? What's he gonna say? All the negative things about this person? Well, Joe Schmo came into the world. He's now left the world. And what did he accomplish? He made enemies. He made enemies wherever he went. Family doesn't like him. Doesn't have too many friends, if any. No one comes out and says anything positive. That's not good, right? If that happened in this world, can't imagine what's going to be in the next one, right? But even so, what does a person want to be remembered for? Say loving father, loving mother, whatever. What does a person want to be remembered for? How much they had? How much they ate? I was at someone's house once, a mortar's house. Right? I was at a mortar's house. And someone came in to console the spouse of this person that passed away. And what did the person, I was sitting right there. I was like, I wonder what my expression on my face was if anyone saw it. Now the person comes in, starts talking to the spouse. And usually, certainly at if it's a religious family, you're talking about the good qualities of the person, what you remember them for. In some places, like in, it's a secular Jewish, place, let's say, that's the only thing they don't talk about. They talk about everything else. Sometimes maybe they'll speak about the dead person also. Yeah. But they don't speak, because it's too close to the heart, right? Because they also know they're going to die. Yeah. So what happened? This person walks in and he tells the spouse, the living spouse, Oh yeah, I remember your spouse, all the shrimp and all the smorgasbord and all the, and all the stuff that he ate. This is what the person says. And the other person says, oh, I probably shouldn't be saying that. I'm sitting there now. Let's make it a little more graphic. When a person dies, what happens? The soul, obviously, soul's in a state of flux, doesn't know what to do, right? Because it can't go back in the body. The soul understands that it can't go back in the body. So the soul, before it gets judged, after the 7 day mourning period, what does the soul do? The soul goes back to places that it knows. Usually like where it lived, maybe where it grew up, whatever. So imagine the soul of this person's there, right? It happened to be his daughter's house. So let's just say for argument's sake, the soul was there. Now the soul understands, there's going to be judgment, there's a spiritual world, there's a world of truth. And the soul now hears this conversation because the soul can hear. The soul can hear everything going on around it. Yeah. So now the soul hears this. Imagine what the soul is thinking. I can't even imagine because the soul's going to get judged by the ultimate judge, God himself, right? So the soul itself is going to get judged. So the soul itself going to be in a lot of pain here. Tremendous amount of pain. Yeah, because that's how they're praising this person. They're praising him by the garbage that was put in their mouth. Now, it doesn't matter if the person knew what they were doing, didn't know what they were doing. They were like a potato farmer in Idaho, no offense. Anyone's a potato farmer, grew up in Idaho. They grew up knowing nothing about Torah. Okay. Doesn't mean ignorance is bliss. Doesn't mean there's going to be no punishment. Okay, so there'll be less punishment for certain things. There still may be great punishment for other things. Okay. Now, even if that's true, and the person didn't know what to do, it was all based on desire, right? It was all based on desire, whatever they did in this world. Okay, so you can cut them some slack. Very good. But even so, this person's now in the Olam HaEmes. It's in the world of truth. Yeah, it hasn't been judged yet, but knows what's coming. Soul is absolutely aware. So now the soul, the soul's in this house. Nobody can see it. It's hovering around. Yeah, no one can see it, but it can hear everything. It can hear everything go on. It can scream out. No one will hear it. So now the soul hears this praise or lack of praise. The soul hears about all the garbage they ate in their lifetime. Only some of it. I can't imagine the pain. Because the soul knows what absolute truth is now. And the soul knows it's going to get judged. And the soul is watching this person demolish it. Absolutely demolish it. He's not doing it on purpose. He's not doing it on purpose to demolish the person. There's always consoling the spouse. Oh, I remember, your husband bought all this great tray food. That's a praise? That's a praise? What's going to happen? He's going to get judged on that. Again, probably be lesser judgment. So you tell him he doesn't know anything? Okay. It was all based on desire? Okay. But that ain't good. In either case, it's not good. So what would it be remembered for? I mean, this person finally said after saying a few things like, oh, I probably shouldn't be saying this. I'm like, yeah, you probably should be saying it because, first of all, it's not something should be said. But second of all, if you knew really like what was going on, that's not a praise. It's like, if you like say, wow, I remember your spouse, yeah, okay. They were obese. They had a good time doing it. They had a good time getting there. Yeah, when they die of heart attack, carotid arteries. That's not a praise. I was supposed to say, wow, you're right. They really enjoyed food, but that's what killed them. So you happy? You happy that, they're obese? That's what you're praising over here? Like, seriously. Again, I always say, fact is greater than fiction. There are certain things you cannot make up. This is something you can't make up. Yeah. So what is a person? So anyway, back to I want to get lost in my parable here, right? Back to the original thing. What does a person want to be remembered for? Or remembered for the garbage you ate? That's what you want to be remembered for? Maybe someone wants to remember they were a great philanthropist. Maybe, they helped the poor. Maybe they want to be remembered for volunteer work. They want to be remembered, as a loving parent. They want to be a lot of good things the person can be remembered for. Right? That is for sure. But what are you living for? You're living for the accolades? You're living just to live? Chasing your tail just to live? Plenty of people out there trying to survive. Okay. Right? That's true. It's not all about work. It's not about how much money I make or don't make. I mean, depends what you do. Right? But, we size up people by what they do. Right? You meet a new person for the first time. Yeah. First thing you're going to ask where you're from, probably. Second question is, what do you do? Now, who cares what they do? We size people up, for better or for wrong. I spoke about this a lot also, right? We size the person up by what they do. So I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I don't know, I do construction, I do other things. We size the person up, for better or for worse. That's what people do. That's how they judge them. As if to say, oh, he's a doctor, oh, he's a lawyer. Like, the person can be scum of the earth behind closed doors. Nobody knows what they do. They say, oh, but he's a doctor, but he's a lawyer, but he's got prestige, he's got a title, he's got this. Yeah, we can scum of the earth in other ways. Yeah. So it's not about what you do. That's only what you do to make money. Yeah. What you do to put food on the table. You can enjoy it. I'm not saying not. You can be really into it. You can be passionate. Okay. But that doesn't necessarily mean who you are, right? It's very simple proof. Someone works on Wall Street, as we always say, double-breasted suit, single-breasted suit. I don't know if it's changed or not. Doesn't really matter. What's the first thing they do when they get home? Either they take off their clothes, change their clothes, or they turn on the TV, right? Maybe they turn on the TV first and then change their clothes. I don't know. Yeah. But why are they changing their clothes? Because that's not who they are. They're just doing it for the sake of money. They're dressing up. Now, it could be people are dressing down today in many ways. Could be in Wall Street, it's different today. Okay. But a person is dressing up. Why are they dressing up? Because they're getting paid to dress up. I told someone this once, there was smoke coming out of theirs. Absolute smoke coming. So why do you dress the way I do? Meaning me. So I said, because it's God's uniform. That's the way he wants me to dress. But it doesn't change. Yeah. It's very easy to go shopping, dark suit with or without pinstripes, black, blue, gray. Very easy to go shopping. Very good. Very good. But it's a uniform. God wants me to wear this uniform. Now, some people would be, let's say more modern, so, they won't exactly dress this way. Okay, but it's a uniform. I said, but there's a big difference between this uniform and that uniform. They said, yeah, what's the difference? The difference is, why are they dressing up? And you can see the smoke coming out of this person's ears. Why are they dressing up? One very simple reason. It's called money. That's why they're dressing up. We're dressing up, so to speak, because we believe that's what God wants us to do. You look different if you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt or you're wearing a suit. Or if you're wearing, let's say, jeans or chinos or whatever, right? Whatever type of clothing. Not the same if you're wearing a suit, you're all dressed up. Very different. You take yourself, hopefully a little more seriously when you dress up. Very good. You don't look like you're just going to the gym or something. Okay. But why do other people dress up? Why are they going to dress up? Because that's what their job tells them to do. And it's about money. Oh, the person won't hear that. I said, well, tell me that's not true. I said, tell me it's not true. Because when a person comes home, what are they doing? They're changing their clothes. They're not eating dinner in those clothes. Maybe they will. I don't know. Right? But they're going to change the clothes because they don't want them to get dirty. These are their clothes they have to wear at work. So if the clothes you have to wear at work, you don't want to get them dirty because they're suits. Makes sense. You don't want to pay dry cleaning all the time. Right? Costs a lot. I get it. But that's the difference. That's the difference, a huge difference. They don't want to hear that. But I definitely believe that's the truth. They're dressing up for money. Now, it could be people dressing down today very well. Okay. But if a person's dressing up in a suit and that's the way they have to dress, that's the only reason they're doing it. Because they wouldn't dress that way otherwise. Yeah. So what's going on over here? Yeah. So my main question was, okay, so what's the purpose of life? If someone starts up at the top They'll be spoiled, they have everything coming to them, you know, they'll go in, family business, whatever. Okay. And they have a silver spoon in their mouth, they have it easy. So you say that's not the majority of people. People start from the bottom, they work themselves. Okay. I'm not denying that. But that wasn't my question. My question is you started at the top. When you started at the top, everything's different. You didn't grow up in a slum somewhere in India, right? Or in Harlem or who knows where. Yeah, you grew up with a silver spoon. You grew up with money. Very good. That's different. Very big difference. Now the question is, what do you do with it? And how do you use it? Right? Now, what's someone going to say? What the obvious thing someone's going to say? Who cares? Let them use it the way they want. Okay. Everyone's got free choice. There's no question. Everyone's got free choice. But the fundamental question is, what am I living for? What is important to me? What do I want to be remembered for? Now, isn't it easy to get caught up in life? 100%. Very easy to get caught up in life. It's very easy to waste a lot of time. Very easy. So it comes along the evil inclination and says, yeah, okay, I understand. I got to make amends. I want to turn my life around. I want to change. Change is hard. Change is hard. Anyone who wants to convert or anyone's coming, back to Judaism, you got to change the way you think. You got to change the way you think, the way God wants you to think. That's a much harder thing. It's a much, much harder thing. Yeah, but you're going to say, how can I be on all the time? How can I keep working it all the time? Comes along, but reign over Rabbeinu the Eitzar. Yeah? What did we say before? What did we say before? The Eitzar wants to destroy a person. Yeah? So the Eitzar comes along and tries to prevent you to do mitzvahs. Tries to put roadblocks up. The evil inclinations are not coming, and is not coming to tell you, well, you know what? I want you to desecrate Shabbos. I want you to do idolatry. Now, the evil inclination knows, and you're not going to do that. He knows there's even no point to even try. So what does the evil inclination do? Right? What's his goal? His goal is, all I need to do is make a little bit of a hole in your armor. Show an image that you shouldn't have seen. Or it brings back different memories or who knows what. Right? So the evil inclination comes, all it needs is a little bit of a hole. Tiny hole. Yeah. And the evil inclination got a lot of patience. So all the evil inclination needs to do is to get you to open that hole a little bit more. And then a little bit more. And then at some point, maybe it gets wide open. Yeah. It could be a longer amount of time, shorter amount of time. Person's under pressure. They have anxiety. They got, I don't know, all kinds of other things going on at the same time. Very good. The evil inclination pounces and now takes the hole and rips it apart. Yeah. Rips it apart. Now, there are different ways to try and close it, whatever. Okay. But now a person, let's say, has been overexposed to things they don't want to be exposed. And it keeps happening. I get this question a lot also. Yeah, but I'm in a vicious cycle. It's very hard to stop what I'm doing. Okay. So there's a 3-tier process of repentance, right? First thing is, you got to have regret, you have to have remorse, right? That you're not going to do it again. Very good. You got to make a plan how you're not going to do that again. Okay. Could be, you have to go through Yom Kippur, right? Maybe hopefully Yom Kippur is enough. You go through Yom Kippur, very good. But you got to figure out why you do it. And then you got to figure out what triggers it and how to fix it. So it's very a three-pronged process here, right? I have to figure out now, it might not be so easy. A person may need, help trying to figure out that. But if a person knows themselves well, they know, right? They know why they're doing it. And one answer may be because it's enjoyable. It takes my mind off things. Okay. Yeah. If it doesn't lead to anything else, Maybe I don't have such an issue. But what's the problem? It doesn't stop there. Yeah. Further, okay, I'm only going to look at the thing for like 2 minutes. Okay. But what does it do? The evil inclination going to convince the person 2 minutes not enough. I need 4 minutes. I need 10 minutes. I need more than that. It gets open, 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 open. So it's hard to shut the door. The problem is we do things by we do things by rote. We don't think, right? We absolutely don't think. So what happens when a person doesn't think? They just do things, right? They're affected by what they do, but they don't think. Okay, so what happens? So what happens? They just keep doing it, and they do it more. So when a person does things on a regular basis, they don't stop because the person needs to feed the urge. So whatever that urge is, even if it's something, even though it's not really forbidden. Yeah. Brothers will say, I like to watch cat and dog videos. Okay. Now, technically, is there really anything wrong besides wasting time when a person could have learned Torah? If it's a guy, no. Probably not. Enjoyable, very good. Does it stop there? They say, that's the only thing I do. Okay, let's say it's true. I'll be generous. Let's say it's true. Yeah, even if it's true. Does it stop there? Doesn't stop there. You do it once, you do it a second time, you do it a third time. Then every day, a person's caught up. I know my quick fix. Now, I gotta say, there are worse things to do, okay? I'm not gonna deny that. There are worse things, many worse things to do. Good. But when a person does something, right, as we always say, we get a little bit deeper here. When a person does something, what happens? It goes inside them. It affects the soul. So it's always there. The only question is whether wants to bring it out or not. Sometimes it festers, but it becomes part of you. Once it becomes part of you, then it never disappears. It's very hard to fix. Very, very hard to fix. Now, you can bury it. You can work on burying it. And a person, let's say, could have it buried for years. For years. And then all of a sudden they hear a jingle, they hear something, it reminds them, and it brings it back up, something they haven't thought of in 20 years. Or more. Or less. Doesn't really matter. That is much harder to fight. And the reason it's much harder to fight, because now it's part of your psyche. Once it becomes part of your psyche, it's part of you. Right? Now, it doesn't mean you're going to act on it all the time. And it could be, it's just totally buried. Very good. But even if it's totally buried, it doesn't mean that it disappeared. Now, that's a much scarier proposition. Now, why is it a much scarier proposition? Because once it's part of you, then how do you overcome it? Part of you. It's kind of like someone eats something addictive. Potato chips. They always have something potato chips. You can't eat one. Right? Or back in the day, there were plastic pickles. Right? I don't remember the commercial of plastic pickles. You can't eat one. You always have to eat more than one. Well, they put certain chemicals in things. Yeah. Now, a person can say, okay, we're going to have two. We're going to have three. Doesn't mean you're going to eat the whole bag. Right? But what happens? They put certain things in that your body desires. Now, why did tobacco companies back in the day why they get sued up the gazoo? Because they put in nicotine. And they knew nicotine was addictive. Right? So, any smoker says, I can stop tomorrow. It's very hard to stop. Right? Forget about they understand what it does to them, whatever. Okay. But why is it very hard to stop? Because it's addictive. There are addictive things in it. And that's why they got sued. Right? So that makes it much harder to stop because your body craves it. Yeah. So now you got to figure out, how to stop that desire or give that desire somewhere else that's going to be a healthy way to deal with it. Yeah. So, statistics have not come out yet, about, e-smoking and all that, e-cigarettes, whatever. Right. But, I think another 20, 30, probably 40 years ago, they get the stats. So it's probably not as bad. At this point, it's really not as bad. right? Probably not as bad, even though some people have gotten very sick from it or whatever, but they're not going to come out and say it's totally forbidden because they don't have the stats. They don't have the statistics like by cigarettes. Okay. Well, but people probably say all sorts of things in there that, probably can make it addictive as well. Make it hard to stop. Very good. Yeah, it's also bad. 100% it's also bad. Yeah. So, but the problem is, once a person has started, for better or for worse, once a person has started, it makes it that much harder to stop. Right? It's like anything. Yeah. It's like anything. If it's something addictive, very hard to stop. Why? Because now it's in your system. Yeah. So if it's something physical, I can understand. Yeah. Nicotine is addictive. It's in your bloodstream. It's something now your body craves. So that you can understand. So how am I going to fix it? Smoke another one. Yeah. Whatever the addiction is, whatever the thing that makes your body crave it. Okay. Now we're a hybrid. Every person, Jew or non-Jew, is a hybrid between body and soul. Yeah. The body wants certain things. The soul wants certain things. So as the Ramchal says, if a person is overcome by desire, what happens? You debase the body, you debase the soul. If the soul, i.e., you go in the right way in spiritual terms, so the soul can uplift the body and uplift the soul. But there's a constant battle. And there will always be a constant battle till the day a person dies between body and soul. It's always going to be there, right? Since Adam and Eve ate from the tree, right? Ate from the tree of knowledge. Yeah, the evil inclination's been inside a person. And even though Adam had the right idea, and he said, if you do the right thing exponentially, you get reward. If you do the wrong thing exponentially, you can get punished. Very good. God says you're right. God says, I agree, but he called him a heretic. His greatest creation, he called a heretic. Why did he call him a heretic? He called him a heretic because he said, you're 100% right. What you said is true, but that's not what I created the world for. That's not what I wanted you to do, right? Even though what you say is true, okay. So God had to go to plan B. So, that's why there's death in the world. Never should have been, but God gave man free choice. But even with that, he made the wrong choice for the sake of heaven, right? To elevate the body and the soul. So even God said, you're right. 100%. That makes perfect sense. There's only one problem. I told you not to do it. I told you not to eat from the tree. They blames the snake, right? The wife, he blames his wife. It's all the blame game here, right? He blames his wife. The wife blames the snake, and everyone gets punished. Everybody gets punished. So what happened over here? So in certain terms, it's an amazing thing. Why does the person have thoughts this way, that way, the other way? Because that's what's in his mind. But we have to control the mind. Right? As the Chovos HaLevavos says, calls it the intellect. What's the intellect? The soul. But there's a disconnect between body and soul. Now, you ask any smoker today, right? We have the stats. Everybody knows this to be true. It'll kill you. It will take years off your life. They'll even tell you, yeah, it's going to turn my lungs black. Everybody knows this, right? This is nothing new. This is nothing new. But even though that is going to be the case, they say, well, it's very hard to stop. Okay. It's very hard to stop. They put nicotine in it. It's addictive. Very good. But some will say, it's too enjoyable. I know it's going to kill me, and that's it. It could be, social things with it. Other things, okay, it's not, there are people that smoke. So now, because of secondhand smoke, so, you can't smoke in buildings, you can't smoke other places, whatever. But everyone knows it's a danger. Everybody knows it's a danger. So that's by something physical. That's something we can easily prove. What about spiritual damage? See, this is what the secular world doesn't understand. And they'll never understand because they have no interest. They have no interest in delving into this. Yeah. The soul, the soul is eternal. What the God puts the soul in the body. What's each person has, a given something to do in this world. No one's here for no reason. No matter reincarnated souls. No, it doesn't matter. Nobody's in this world for no reason. Everybody has something to give to the world. Everyone has something to give to creation, to humanity. Yeah, everybody has something to give. Whether they give it, whether they don't, because of life circumstances, whatever, it doesn't matter. Everyone's got something to give. Now, we don't always know what we're supposed to be doing here. That's a whole nother topic. We're not going to deal with right now. But everyone's given something to do here. Everyone has a purpose. Now, that being said, we're not going to know what the purpose is. We don't remember. Soul, as long as it's in the body, is not going to remember in general. Even if you put it under deep hypnosis, right? And talk about, let's say, previous life experiences, whatever. In general, if a person's awake, they're not going to know. They're not going to know what they're here for, right? Judaism definitely does not believe in deja vu, right? Go against all the Freddy Krueger movies, right? Nightmare on Elm Street back in the day. You're never going to know, right? Standing in a place, I've been here before. Never, right? At least according to what I understand, it's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. Now, the soul wants to go after things spiritual. Now, what does that mean? Now, let's understand there are 80,000 different religions in the world. 80,000. Now, 80,000, of all these religions, obviously, we believe Judaism is true. Others is going to say Christianity is true, Buddhism is true. How do you know it's true? Whatever. Doesn't matter. That's not the point. Right? If you have 80,000 different religions, that means in some way, probably a lot of them the wrong way, but in some way, they are looking for spirituality. They're looking for God. They're searching for God. Now, it could be they have all the right intention, right? But obviously, all these other religions certainly we believe are false. Okay. How do you get 80,000 different religions and you have tens of millions of people, billions of people want to have this connection to God? How is that possible? Now, you have atheists out there. That's what Amalek brought to the world, right? Amalek, brought atheism to the world, the belief that there's no such thing as supernatural. In the gematria of Amalek, every Hebrew letter has a corresponds to a number. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2, Gimel is 3. The numerical value of Amalek and Suffolk, the word doubt, are exactly the same. They brought doubt to the world, right? But what's the doubt they brought into the world? This idea there's no such thing as supernatural. So I did a search, and I thought the number should be much higher. Yeah? Because it seems like we live in an atheist world. But there are plenty of Bible thumpers, between the Christians and the Muslims, it's almost more than half of the known world. Yeah? So I thought the number was much higher. It doesn't matter. But why? If you have 80,000 different religions, that means people are searching for God. Very good. Now, how does that work? How is that possible? You got plenty of atheists out there. I'm not saying not, they're in the minority, but okay. Yeah. So why are there so many different religions? Because every person in the world, Jew or non-Jew, they're wired in their DNA, whether they choose to go according to it or not, their DNA is wired to search for God. Why do I say that? Because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Now, we only know, a couple of religions, right? You got Buddhism, you got Hinduism, you got Judaism, you got Zoroastrianism, you got Christianity, right? Name a few others, whatever, but there are thousands. There are millions of people who want a relationship with God. Now, some of them are way off the rails. Most of them don't make any sense at all. Okay. Yeah, but they're searching. They want to have some sort of connection to the supernatural. Many people do not want to believe they leave this world, it's over. Some people do because this world's a hell for them, and they just, okay, so I'll just die and that's it. right? And nothing will happen, and finish. So my time on this world was pure hell. Okay. Yeah. But the Ramchal says in the beginning, the path of the just, the very beginning, he says it cannot be, and this is his proof. He says it cannot be we're only living in this world. That this world is the ultimate fame, right? I'm gonna live forever. No. Yeah. Yeah. How do we know? How does the Ramchal know? Because he says, and it's something I spoke about earlier, he says that there's a lot of suffering in this world. A lot of people have a hard time. You have children that have horrible diseases. You have people that die young. You have people that die in car crashes. You have people that, suffer in other ways. He says, why would there be a world, only one world, where so many people have difficulty? Whether it's livelihood, whether it's family, whether it's both, right? It could be anything in between. People can have all kinds of problems, health issues, throw that in. Can have all kinds of issues. So the Ramchal says, de facto, because the world we look at is so messed up that we messed it up, but so many people suffer, how can it be that this world is the ultimate? That doesn't make any sense. Person is born, severely disformed, disfigured, or has a horrific disease, right? Kushner wrote a book when good things happen to, when bad things happen to good people. And I wouldn't tell you to read it because it's heresy. But it sold millions. Now, what happened? He had a child, had progeria. Progeria, a horrific disease, right? Basically, it's having like an 80-year-old the body of a 10-year-old, right? It's a horrific thing to see, like, imagine seeing the face of like a shriveled up face of someone who's 80 years old, but he's only 10, right? I mean, it sounds like a bad sci-fi movie, but like, yeah. So basically, he said, I looked into my deeds. I'm not such a bad person. My wife's not such a bad person. It must be God doesn't run the world. Okay, that's a big mistake, right? What do you do with the last two chapters of the book of Job, where Job questions certain things, and God says, "Well, can you do this and save these birds or whatever?" No. Can you play with the Leviathan like I could? You die by its own breath, right? Can you do this? And he says, "Shut up! You have nothing to say. How I run the world. You have no idea." Yeah. Again, I'm not here to judge. He went through a very hard time. Yeah. But what did he say? Why did he make people feel good? Not my responsibility. God must not run the world. He made a mistake. In this case, he made a mistake. He took this kid and killed him and gave this horrific disease. Now, half a consolation or a quarter of a consolation, right? Is understanding. We can understand this, in our minds, in our intellect, very, not so easy to put into practice. We can understand if there's such an idea of reincarnation, which does exist according to Kabbalah, yeah, then that first of all, that child can't be punished. Why can't that child be punished? We always say, because it's not liable. Child born that way, not a punishment for the child. He's not over the age of bar mitzvah. Yeah, so he's not liable. It's not a punishment for him. Not a punishment for the parents. Yeah, the soul has to go through it. Why? Any number of reasons, right? That's how it's going to get fixed up in this one, to go through that. For whatever reason. Very good. So it's not punishment for him. Right? Not punishment for the soul. The soul should get fixed up right after it dies. Right after the person dies, the soul should go straight into, straight into paradise. That's what should happen. Yeah, that should be enough. Hopefully that should be enough. Well, let's say over here. So he made a mistake. Serious mistake. He's basically saying God doesn't exist. Or no, he's not sorry. He's not saying God doesn't exist. He said God's out of control. That's worse. If you believe in God, they say, well, he can't control everything. And this is just by bad luck. Well, we don't believe in bad luck. Yeah. Everyone has what they have to go through. Everyone has their own trials and tribulations. Yeah. This is part of what he had to go through. Okay. But he came to the wrong conclusion. Yeah. He came to the wrong conclusion. Yeah, God's not in control. That's obviously the wrong conclusion, and that is heresy. So I said it's a quarter of a consolation by knowing that it must be what the soul has to go through. Oh, so comes on the Ramchal and Path of the Just, the beginning of Path of the Just, and what does he say? He says, look, you see a lot of people suffer. Tremendous amount of people suffer. Everybody suffers in some way. Some more, some less, but you see, he says, there are tragedies, there's sickness, there's, upheavals. People go through all kinds of things. Okay. So he asked a very fundamental question. If that's the case, how in the world is it possible to say this world is the ultimate? Does it make sense? Yeah, someone say, what's your bad luck? All right, let's go back. Did God create the world? Is God in charge or not? So, okay, maybe you're, dealing with someone on different parameters. But if we believe God created the world, there's the purpose in the world, the purpose of what we have to do here. Very good. So if we have a purpose, then it can't be if there's sickness and famine and all kinds of other things in between. It cannot be a person just in this world to suffer. Right? Sounds like Christianity. Right? One person suffering, you don't have to do anything. Okay. Doesn't make any sense either for a lot of reasons. Right? But think about it. If a person goes through upheavals and difficulty and hardship, some have it more, some have it less, that's not the point. But the point is this world cannot be the ultimate. Yeah? If God created the world, why would he create a world just like that? And that would be the only world. Right? So again, go back to my original question. My original question was, if you're born a Rockefeller, you got the spoon right in your, silver spoon, beautiful. It doesn't mean you won't have trials and tribulations. You won't have challenges. That's not what it says. But you started now at the top. So now you didn't have these challenges. You're going to have other challenges. Very good. So maybe if you're born Rockefeller or Getty or whatever, right? So maybe this world is the ultimate for them. Maybe they're going to do things. They won't have, another world. Oh, but what if a person suffers? They're born with a dreaded disease, let's say. Or other things happen. Plenty of other tragedies that happen, unfortunately. Yeah. Look what happened in Australia, right? People go there for Hanukkah lighting. Anyone think they're not coming back? They're going to get shot at? Then people say you have to have better security. You have to, okay. Yeah, within reason. But did anyone think anything's going to happen? No one thinks anything's ever going to happen. Yeah, okay, you got to put your best foot forward, this and that. Maybe they should have more security, whatever. Okay. But imagine, you're at this thing, you don't know what's going on. All of a sudden, boom, you just got picked off. You just got picked off. You're there at a Hanukkah lighting ceremony. Yeah, on the beach. Okay. What's the problem? You think someone's going to come and shoot? Well, what's going on in the world? They shouldn't have public things. Okay, well, that's debatable. Right? That's debatable. But anybody who went there, it would be interesting if you could interview them. I mean, not the ones that died, obviously, but, interview them and say, well, we worried about security. You got to put your best foot forward. You can't be stupid. Okay. But still, anyone think anything's going to happen? Maybe in the light of what's going on, especially there. It's had a lot of problems recently, with anti-Semitism. Okay. Maybe you should have beefed up security, done other things. Very good. You say, well, if God can protect them, then you don't need security. Let's say we're not, holding necessarily at that level, but let's say. So every bullet has its place. That was their time to die for whatever reason. But imagine. And no one's expecting that. No one expects walking down the street something's going to happen. Why did it happen? I want it to happen. Why do you want it to happen? I don't know. It's revving up things for coming of the Messiah. Very good. Tell that to the loved ones of the people who died. Well, don't worry. Things are getting quicker. Everything's great. The Messiah's going to come. And well, looks like it's supposed to get worse before it gets better. But even without that, I don't really want to touch that topic right now. But what's the point? Person doesn't know one day the next. King Solomon said this. King Solomon himself, wisest of all men, said, you don't know what today's going to bring. You don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. You don't have any clue, no idea whatsoever. Right? So you got to live. You got to repent every day because you don't, unless tomorrow you die. You don't know. Right? You don't know what's going to be. Nobody knows. Right? No one has prophecy today. Right? Prophecy is only given to little kids and imbeciles. Nobody has prophecy. Right? You have great rabbis that have, maybe divine inspiration will form a prophecy. Okay. No one else has prophecy. Yeah, anyone claiming to, they're fools. God spoke to me, really? No prophecy today. Regardless, what am I living for? What in the world am I living for? The Ramchal says very clear. There has to be something else going on because a person's not living in this world as the ultimate. It cannot be the ultimate. And the reason is, look what goes on in the world. Go on the internet, open up a newspaper. I don't know, people read newspapers today? Whatever. Read what's going on. Man's inhumanity to man. All over the place. All over the place. Yeah. Yeah, what just happened in America? Rob Reiner, right? Famous meathead on All in the Family, right? People don't even know what All in the Family is today, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, killed by his own son, looks like. 78 years old. Still had plenty of things he wanted to do, this and that. What happened? He thought his son was going to kill him? I mean, let's say he's guilty. Okay. Yeah. Let's assume he's guilty. If it's not, someone else did it. Okay. Let's say his son did it. Let's say for argument's sake his son did it. Yeah. You think he woke up one day and said, I got to get protection from my son, he's going to kill me, even though he had mental health issues and he was a drug addict and other things? He wasn't thinking that. Guarantee wasn't thinking that. Yeah, and that's what happened. So you take somebody like that. He got fame, he got money. Yeah, was in a fancy place. People love him. A lot of people loved him. That's how he dies. Right? He ain't coming back. That's it. It's not Elvis where, you leave tickets for him for a football game and think he's coming to a game. Yeah, he's dead. Okay. Think about it. If you'd asked him 20 years ago, you think that's going to happen? If you can picture the way you're going to die, how's it going to be? Yeah, maybe we would say, be in a nursing home or probably, have Alzheimer's, I don't know who I am, this, that. Is he going to think someone's going to murder him? I don't think so. And let's say it wasn't his son. Let's say someone just broke in and killed him. Or steal his money, who knows what. Whatever he had there. Yeah? But you're going to say, should have better protection, should have. Yeah? That was his time to go. That's the way it went. Why? Don't know. That was his judgment. That's how he had to die. We don't have the liberty. We don't have the liberty to know. What would most people want? They die in their sleep. They don't suffer. And other people around them don't suffer watching what they go through. Okay? We're not in control of nothing, right? That's what we have to understand. But you see, so you say, okay, what would people say? Great guy, 78 years old. Okay. Very successful, this and that. No, that's not what people are saying. People are saying this is a horrific tragedy. Tragedy. It's a tragedy. Yeah. They're not saying, okay, they're going to remember for good things or whatever. Yeah. Because that's going to be man's inhumanity to man. They're going to say, people are going to say this is awful. This is horrific how it happened. I'm not here to judge. Yeah. It's a horrific thing how it happened. Yeah. Anyone want to go that way? I don't think so. Imagine. I mean, if it's true, yeah, imagine a person is killed by their own kid. So tell me, he should know better. He was psychotic. He had, mental health issues. I don't think he thought it was ever going to kill him. Yeah, I don't think, I don't they say they had a big argument a few days ago, whatever, last week. Okay. They think his life was in danger? I don't think so. Maybe things happened too fast. He couldn't do anything. Maybe. I don't know. We don't have the luxury. We don't have the luxury of knowing what's going to happen. But here's a very good example. Person had fame, had money, right? And, big house, all this, very good. It didn't help him. Didn't help him. Or I would say even better. Let's say somebody has that kind of fame or whatever. They get a dreaded disease. That's it. Game's over. No matter what they do, how much money they spend, their body ain't coming back. Yeah, they're not going to be able to fix it. You take somebody, let's say, at the height of their career, what happens? They get pancreatic cancer, stage 4. What happens when they have stage 4 pancreatic cancer? Most likely you'll die. Yeah, you'll die pretty quick, within a year, within months, depends. Yeah, usually when it gets to stage 4, that's it. There's nothing, really not much to do. So now imagine a person was on the way up, really on the way up, top of their game, and that's what happens. Got cut down. Okay. So maybe their life gets prolonged because they have more money and this and that. Okay. But guess what? They die. They die. Yeah. People have died in the 50s. People died in their early 60s. People died younger. Yeah. They don't know where these diseases come from. They can say it's based on diet and all the garbage you eat and other things. Okay, but they don't know. Doctors don't know. That's not the number one killer anyway. It's heart attacks. People die by heart attacks. Yeah, but even so money can prolong their life. Okay. But so now imagine they're at the end of their life. Yeah, they could be in their 40s. They could be in their 50s. They know they're going, they know they're going to die. They know for sure they're going to die. It's just a matter of when. Right? Could be months, could be maybe a year, could be less. They're thinking life very differently. Now, all the things that might have been upset about, or maybe now they look at as being petty, okay. Boy, it's a really morbid discussion here, but they're looking at these things as being petty. They don't matter anymore. You know why they don't matter anymore? They don't matter anymore because they know they're going to be in the grave. So why are they getting upset about it now? It's annoying. Okay. A lot of things in a person's life are annoying. Very good. But now it doesn't matter because you're going to be dead. When a person's dead, these other things don't matter. Yeah? So why is it, right? Well, that's another question here, but it's part of the same theme. Why is it that a person is only going to understand what's really important in life when they're death's door? Now, let's say any of these people would get miraculously cured. Let's say they're able to stop pancreatic cancer, you can live another 10 years. Let's say. We'll give this person another 10 years of life. They're living in the background knowing that they say they got it, but who knows? Tomorrow, you don't know what's going to be tomorrow, the next day, or any other day. Okay. Well, let's say 5 years gone by. Yeah? You've already lived 5 years. Very good. But during those 5 years, probably a person like walking on eggshells. You don't know what's going to be. Okay. But is a person really thinking what's important in life or not? That's the question. Or are they back to their petty self and what bothers them? Yeah, they're probably back to their petty self because they forget about this thing. But if they're already at death's door, they know they're going to die like in 2 days or a month or whatever. The other things don't matter, but it's already too late. Yeah, and if they could get fixed up, these things will matter again. Why? Because that's who we are. That is exactly who we are. We don't take things, we only realize what we have until you don't have it. But we're focused on all the wrong things. You say, this person hurt me, this person did this person did that. It's all true, right? And I got to do whatever I can to fix certain things. Okay. That's true. 100%. And a person may need certain things, you may have to go extraordinary circumstances to get them, whatever. Okay. That's your reality now. Okay. What's the bigger reality? That's only what you're going through now. What's the bigger reality? The bigger reality is what I do. The bigger reality is how I see the bigger picture. The bigger reality is how I do it. You're going to say, oh, but it's so hard, this, that. It's true. I'm not saying it's not hard. I'm saying it's not difficult, not impossible. Yeah, or seemingly impossible. Very good. But again, let's go back to what the Ramchal said. The Ramchal said, what am I living for? What is important to me? Yeah. So it cannot be this ultimate thing where I'm going to buy whatever I feel like buying. If I have all the money, I'm going to build and do this and do that. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to take it with you. Who ends up getting it and using it? Probably your spouse or your kids. Unless you don't leave it to your kids. Right? So you can say, no, I got enjoyment out of it for 20 years. Very good. Yeah, I got to enjoy his life, for however long. Okay. But you're taking it with you. Yeah. You gotta say, I can spend the money the way I want. Okay. Some people be more charitable, less charitable. Bottom line, right? Bottom line here. What's important to me? You'll say, that's important to me. Okay. What's life really about? They say the difference between men and boys is just the size of their toys. Maybe. People get carried away. And the more you have, the more you have, the more you want. And it never ends. Right? Absolutely never ends. So what happens? People will say, I can do what I want. I can live how I want. Right? As we said before, you want to live this way? You want to pray? Very good. Right? That's what you want. Okay. What's real life? Right? Real life is going through difficulty and overcoming difficulty. Now, some people say, well, I'm in a certain situation, seemingly impossible. Okay. That's why you have to say the mantra a million times a day. God, you're the one in control. I can't do anything without you. You are the one in control. But it's not about what I do. It's about how I interact with others. Right? Most things we beat our chest for in Yom Kippur is about how we act with others. Not just between me and God, that's part of it. But the vast majority, if you go through Vidui, if you go through confession, on Yom Kippur, just look at what it says. I've sinned in front of you, God, I did this, and I did that. What are most of the things? Are by speech and how I interact with others. That's what we're going to be remembered for. Not going to be how much money you have. And there are people that'll struggle with money their whole lives. Yeah, because that's what God wants, right? Rich people have the test that they're going to help others with their money. Poor people have the test of what? Are they going to be happy even with the little that they have? So I can tell you've been on both sides of the equation. They say, well, it's easy when you have money, so you can give, you can help, you can do this, you can do that. Makes life a lot easier. Okay. So part of the test is let's see what happens when it doesn't happen. That's part of the test. Not an easy test. Somebody says, well, I wish I had the test of being wealthy. Okay. I saw it brought down, I don't remember the source, but I saw it brought down that 1 in 1,000 wealthy people go to Gan Eden, go to heaven, go to paradise. 1 in 1,000. Why? Because the ones that have money don't want to help others. There are some that do, very good. Yeah, but if you're given that kind of money, your obligation, okay, you can live comfortably, but your obligation is to help others. That's why God gave it to you. Yeah, now, you can set up a charity fund, you can have other people run it, so people don't break down your door. There are different ways to do it. Very good. But if God gave it to you, He gave it to you for a reason. And that reason is to help others. And it should help others in a major way. There are people that, okay, they'll get money, save the wealth. That's silly. They'll say, you want to give it to a yeshiva and a synagogue and this, I want to give it to save the wealth. Okay. So why did God give them the money? To blow it? Or if someone has a lot of money, where do they give it? They set up a whole thing. University. Look what university's done lately. Yeah, look at all the great education gone in top universities. We get barred from going to school because you got these crazies out there, saying we're committing genocide. So why did God give them the money? Right? What's the simple answer? What's the simple answer? Michal says in Derech Hashem. Why people granted money? Because they did 1 or 2 mitzvahs in the world. God has to give them reward, so He gives it in this world. Yeah, so you can get mega wealth, less wealth, whatever it is. They're not going to have a portion of the world to come. Yeah, that's why even people have it easy. Why do they have it easy? Because God doesn't have anything to do with them, right? God's not going to have anything to do with them in the next world. Now, he'll give them, reward for whatever mitzvah they've done. And if he gives them reward, for that, what does that mean? They won't have a portion of the world to come. Yeah, so you can say, okay, but should it be that way? Should it be that way? Or not? So that's what God does, right? Right? That's what God does. So you're gonna say, okay, doesn't mean they're not going to suffer in this world. Definitely doesn't mean that. God will take care of them in this world and the next one. But just because they have mega wealth now, or wealth, or whatever, yeah, God has to reward them. Can't go against his own principles. He has to reward them. Very good. But who says they're getting anything later? They can say no one's that evil. Okay. Maybe no one's that evil today. Maybe. That their soul is going to get obliterated. Like totally obliterated. But you know what? God doesn't have to do that. God has a different way. God can just make the soul be punished forever. Right? And go through the hardship forever. Instead of obliterating the soul, that's easy. That's a lot easier. What happens? The person dies, nothing happens. Soul gets destroyed. What if God took the soul and punished it over and over and over again for eternity? Could do that. Right? He brought up the soul of Titus. That's exactly what he's going through. When before he died, he said, Gemara says that he said, burn my body, scatter my ashes over the seven seas so the God of Israel can't judge me. Very good. Yeah, so what happened? So he said, okay, what's your punishment? What's happening to you? So he says, every day, God gathers my ashes, puts me back together in the body, and he burns me. And he burns me every day for eternity. He didn't just obliterate his soul. Could have done it. He says, I'm not going to have any connection. No, he says, I'm going to make you suffer. For what you did, you're going to suffer exponentially. Yeah, but not everyone's that bad. Not everyone's going to have that punishment. But at the end of the day, what can happen? You can suffer in this world, suffer in that world, but potentially have a portion of the world to come. But if God decided he's going to give you a portion of the world to come in this world, that means your soul gets obliterated. Yeah? Because he can't go against how we set up the world. There's reward and punishment. So if you have Granny cross the street once, you gave charity once in your life, he's going to reward you. Okay? So let's say a person get rewarded in a major way. What's going to happen later? Zero. That's what should happen. Why should a person spit in God's face all the time, this and that, have a portion of the world to come? Why? Without going through serious rectification, either in this world or that world, or both. Why should that happen? That wouldn't make any sense, right? That's the whole question. Evil people have it easy, but why do they have it easy? This is the reason, one reason. It could be multiple reasons. This is one reason, very simple reason. Because God has to reward them. If they did a mitzvah in this world, very good. They did a mitzvah, okay? God has to reward them. Beautiful. God has to reward them. Who says to get anything in the next world? But we don't see it that way. Why don't we see it that way? We don't see it that way because we see the person doing all kinds of terrible things, right? They're doing all kinds of terrible things. So we think they have it easy. And they're rewarded for their evil actions. They're not rewarded for their evil actions. It's just the opposite. They're rewarded for one good thing they've done in this world. But that doesn't mean they're going to be basking in God's glory in the next world. Not for sure not. Right? Like someone told me, when I die, I'm going 6 feet under. I said, I hope for your sake you're right. Because if I'm right, the judgment of the next world, you're in trouble. So, spiritual world, life after death. He says, give me a soundbite. That's what the person said. Give me a soundbite. Explain to me in 30 seconds. Right? If I were to start speaking after 10 seconds, I would get cut off. I said, you know what? I'll send you a link. Here's the link. You want to look at it? Very good. Yeah, let me ask this question. How many times can you be reincarnated? So as far as I understand, it's either 3 or 4. It's either 3 or 4. Now, most people are probably in the last reincarnation, right? So probably not too many new souls coming out. This is probably the last go around. So we have to fix up whatever we need to fix up, and that's it. Probably not coming back after that. Now, the Noahites get reincarnated? They can. Non-Jews can be reincarnated, right? It's not out of the realm of not out of the realm of reality. It can be the same thing, rectify mistakes, to come back, to complete a certain mission, whatever, but it can work by non-Jews also. Yeah, it's not just for Jews, right? Not just for Jews. But right, it's an interesting thing because a lot of people don't think Judaism Judaism thinks that that Judaism doesn't believe in reincarnation. Right, talking about Buddhism and other things, whatever, but where do they get it from? Where do they get it from? Yeah, somebody asked, I think because my soul is part of God, God will be just punishing himself. So yeah, it's an interesting concept. Every person is made in God's image. Yeah. Now, how is God's image in every person and how that works? That's a good question. God's not punishing himself. It's only part of him, small part of him. Yeah, but even if God breathed in the spirit of life and he gave us a soul, every soul is unique. Even though that soul is part of God, God's not sinning though. Right? That's a mistake. God's not sinning. It's the soul that's sinning. Oh, but the soul's part of God. Yeah, but the soul that's in the body is free will. Why would God put a spark of him so the person could sin? That wouldn't make any sense logically. Right? He put in the soul in the body to have contrast. Yeah? And the soul can only live if it's in a body. Very good. But God is no form. God doesn't sin. Yeah? God doesn't sin in any way, shape, or form. So just because we're a spark, we have that spark. That's not God sinning. That's the fact he put us in a body. Very good. So if God put us in a body, what's going on? We have free choice. We absolutely have free choice. God does whatever he decides to do. God is complete. God is perfect. Right? That's exactly what the Torah says. God doesn't make mistakes. So if God doesn't make mistakes and he put a spark in us and we're part of him, very good. It's not him making the mistake. It's the fact that the person in the human body's got free choice. Right? So he wants us to do the right thing, but that's not a reflection on him. That he's actually, that God himself is actually making mistakes and doing things wrong. He has no part of it. He's outside of that. He gave man the ability that, first of all, he gave the spark of him to give us life. Okay. But we have the choice what to do with that life. We have the choice to make right decisions. We have the choice to make wrong decisions. Right? God could be influencing us, yeah. Evil inclination could be influencing us. But if we go according to our evil inclination, and God put the evil inclination, now the evil inclination is inside of us. What happens, let's say, Isaiah chapter 45, verse 7. God created evil. Right? That's what Isaiah says. Right? Regardless of different versions of King James, how they interpret it. God created evil. It's very clear in the Hebrew. God created evil. Does it make God evil? The same thing. So they say God is evil because he created evil. Doesn't mean that. God created it. Why did he create it? To give us free choice. That's why he created it. Could people tap in and do the wrong thing? Yes. So that means God is evil because the person chose the wrong thing? Right? So it doesn't mean that. Right? A person makes whatever choice they want. God put the spark of himself inside a person in order for us to live. That's what the soul is. Soul comes from God under God's heavenly throne, whatever that means. But he's giving life to the person. So the person can, if that would be the case, then we should all be doing the right thing because we're all a spark of God. We should all be going in the right path. So this is a much deeper, fundamental question. Yeah? If God put the spark of himself in everybody, then we should all be robots. Why aren't we robots? I mean, no one put a gun to anyone's head, on this day to listen to me. That's for sure. Maybe a person's a masochist. I don't know. They want pain. So they come here and listen. Okay. Yeah, again, so if a person goes against his evil inclination, or let's say gives into his evil inclination. So what is the person doing? The person is using that evil inclination for bad. 100%. right? So if the person's using it for bad, if a person's using it for bad, and God created evil, then why is he punishing you? He shouldn't punish you. He created evil. Doesn't mean God is evil. He created evil. Very good. If God created evil, yeah? If God created evil and I tap in, or someone, not me, someone taps in and does something they shouldn't do, that means God is evil? Doesn't mean he's evil. Yeah, it means we made a bad choice. Right? Yeah. We make bad choices. Now, there are a lot of things out there look very appealing. Yeah. Make us want to do things that we shouldn't do. And we know that. But there are things that are so enjoyable we don't want to stop. Yeah, but that's a lack in us. Doesn't God know that? Doesn't God know there's an evil inclination? Yes. Doesn't he know people could tap into evil and do terrible things? Yes. 100%. Is that what he wants mankind to do? No. Right? But we're the only being that has that kind of free choice. Animals don't have free choice. Even if they choose to eat or not to eat, animals only have one aspect of the soul. It's called the nefesh behemoth. They have an animalistic soul, like everybody does, but they only have that. Animals are programmed, right? They're programmed DNA. We're not programmed. We have free choice. We're the only ones that can do whatever we want. Person wants to eat a ham. Jew wants to eat a ham sandwich. Can eat a ham sandwich. Nothing's stopping them. No one's putting a gun to their head. Person wants to desecrate Shabbos. Their choice. They don't want to keep mitzvahs. Their choice. Now, that doesn't make God evil. They're making a choice. They're making the wrong choice. But the Torah makes very clear you make the wrong choice is payback. It could be serious payback, less than serious payback. That's very clear. And as I always say, if Christianity would be true, I'd be the first one dancing off the rafters, getting people to do it. To keep it. It'd be the easiest thing. The easiest thing. All I have to do is believe in JC, everything's great, no matter what I do. Say a few Hail Marys, pay off the priest, very good, that's it. I'm done. Whatever I do doesn't matter. Whatever I do is irrelevant. It goes totally against the Torah. The Torah is all about repercussions for what I do. It's very clear. You do this, very good. You don't do this, it's just payback, right? Second paragraph of the Shema, we say every day. There'll be payback. Oh, I believe in him, I'm saved, and everything's beautiful. I wish it would be true. Not that I do, but if it would be true, 100%, I'd be the first person to tell you. I'd be going around the world converting people. Yeah, trying to convince people. It'd be the easiest thing. Easiest thing in the world. The problem is it's not true. It goes against everything Judaism stands for. Because I have to take repercussions for what I do. That's it. Right? Fundamental Jewish principle. Got to take, repercussions. Whatever they may be. But just because the person taps into something they don't do doesn't mean God is evil. It doesn't mean that's what God wants. He gave us free choice. Adam and Eve ate from the tree. Big mistake. So now it's harder to overcome the evil inclination. True. Makes it a lot harder. At the same time, if we do the right thing exponentially, we get reward. That's also true. Right? It's also true. Yeah. But what's the answer? The answer is God wants you to do what he wants you to do. Yeah. Someone says, okay, you want to pin me down here? Good luck. If you want to summarize what's the purpose of man in this world in one sentence, what would it be? What would it be? It would be to do what the God of Israel wants you to do. Now you're going to say, how could you say that? Because the Torah makes very clear. He wrote it himself, passed it on to Moses, gave it to us. What's the whole purpose of life? In one sentence, one soundbite, what's the most important thing in life? Being attached to God. How am I supposed to do that? Oh, I have an explanation. I got the Torah. The Torah tells me. How am I supposed to do that? Keep this, don't do that, whatever. Right? It's being close to God. That's the purpose. How am I supposed to be close to God? Yeah? Do what he says. How do I know what he says? He wrote a book. How do I know it's true? Different discussion. But that's the answer. I'm here to serve God the best way possible. Now, someone will say, maybe the Buddhists are right, maybe the Christians are right, maybe this one's right. Okay, that's a different discussion, right? But it's very clear. Very clear. There's a Latin term. We use the Latin term. Yeah, work on my Latin here, right? And the Latin term is imiteu Dei, to imitate God. Now, how would I take that? And according to the Torah, so I would say you do what God tells you to do, as a Jew and a non-Jew. Non-Jews have less mitzvahs to do, less obligations to do. Jews have a lot more things to do. Very good. Got a lot more obligation. That's where it's going to start, right? But that is the purpose. The purpose is to do what God told you to do and have a connection to God. That's the purpose. How are you supposed to do that? We got a book, right? Manufactured by God himself. Yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. Now, how do I know it's true? And all the religions are false? That's a different discussion. But you want to say in the sound bites, what's the purpose of life? To do what God says. Who is the God we love? How am I supposed to do that? Again, I have directions. It's complicated. Not so easy. It's not supposed to be easy. But that again, why would there be 80,000 religions in the world? Because there's a spark of God in everybody, that God wants everybody to come back to him. Otherwise, it wouldn't make logical sense. But you're going to tell me, look, there, I don't know, what was the stat? 400, 500 million atheists in the world, let's say. Right? Let's say you had billions of atheists. Yet half the known world would be atheists. Now, why would that defy logic? Because it said God breathed in the spirit of life into man. Every man, not Jews. It doesn't say Jews. It says every man is a spark of God. We're created in God's image, whatever that means. Everybody. So if everybody's created in God's image, it means God wants something from us. What does he want? He wants us to be close to him. That's what he wants. He wants us to come back to him. 80,000 different religions doesn't, it doesn't mean everyone's being an atheist. That's not what it means. They're searching for God in their own way. The wrong way, but they're searching. Why would they be searching? If there are 80,000 different religions telling me, 79,980 or what do you call it? They're all atheists. Don't tell me they're religious. Don't tell me they're searching for religion. They're searching for a higher power. Let's say, why tell me that? It'd be much easier to say they're atheists. But most of the known world are not atheists. Even though it seems like it, but it's not the case. They're searching in the wrong way. But what's the ultimate goal? The ultimate goal is to lead a righteous life. Now, someone's going to ask, how do I do that? Beautiful. Yeah? I have instructions. Okay. How do I know the instructions are true? Okay, that's a different discussion. But that's the answer in a soundbite. That's what God wants. Now, the problem is, for some people it'll be easier. For some people it'll be harder. And for some people it'll seem almost impossible. Why? Right? Why? What's the problem? What's the obvious problem that stops a person? Difficult. If a person had all the money in the world, right? They weren't like, their name is Getty or their name is, I don't know, Rockefeller, whatever. They're not lacking anything. Are they searching for God? Probably not. Probably not. Now, most likely, some of these people, maybe a lot of them are going to be miserable, because most people are miserable in this world, even if they have money. They have all kinds of other difficulties. Very good. Yeah. But why are they miserable? Because they have all the money in the world. Doesn't mean anything. They have no meaning with it. They just go out and buy whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. They're not lacking anything. So if you're not lacking anything, where's the meaning? Maybe they'll say, well, get together, every week, family gets together, this and that. We make that meaningful. Okay. They make other things meaningful. Okay. Is that the real meaning? Right? It's not money. Money is not going to make the meaning over here. That's not what it's going to do. Now people say, I wish I had that problem. Okay. Well, there are plenty of people with money that are miserable. Yeah, that are miserable. Miserable marriages, that are like their kids, what they're doing and how they came out and different things. They're miserable. Yeah. Say, okay, I'll take that chance. I'll take that chance. I'd want it much easier. Okay. Comes with other things. No one gets off this life scot-free. Right? The Ramchal makes very clear, because there's so much hardship and difficulty in this world by definition cannot be the ultimate world. Doesn't make sense. There has to be another world. There has to be a spiritual world, right? But now we have videos out, right? There are videos of people saying they had out-of-body experiences, they came back to their body. Now they say exactly what Kabbalah says, right? The drawn to, their body hovers over their body. The soul hovers over their body. They see they're drawn to this white light. They see their life flash before their eyes. They all say the same thing. Now, if I took a lot of these videos, you're going to think they're all lying? You got Christians who've said it. You got Buddhists who've been said it. Men, women, children. Yeah. They said they saw the soul hover, or they saw themselves hover over the body. What was themselves? It was the soul. So there's something different than the body. The body's lying there without the soul. What happens? Dies. Very clear, dies. Now, if you take a cross-section of all these people, men, women, children, adults, kids, have money, don't have money, whatever it is, all kinds of different socioeconomic situations of who they are and where they live, demographics, where they are in the world, doesn't matter. Someone could be in Africa, someone could be in, I don't know, in Europe, someone could be in the States, someone could be in Russia, anywhere. They say the same thing, right? So now a person can't say, well, they're making it up. I mean, dozens, hundreds of these cases. How can they be all making it up? Say, well, it's only men, it's only that. Well, there's a whole cross-section of people. You can't just blow it off. You can't just blow it off and say, no, it's only in that section of the world. Well, I got another section of the world. I got another place. It's only by men. Oh, I got women, children over here. I got young adults. I got rich. I got poor, black, white, Asian. Doesn't matter. Right? I got across the board. How do you just throw that out? How do you throw that information out? Oh, it's all made up. They're all trying to get people to believe in religion and to believe in God. They have what do you call it? They have an agenda. Let's say some of these people were never religious before. And this is what happened. And now they come to religion. Why? Because they saw the real world. They saw the spiritual world. So you can come up with any number of things to try and deflate it. And try and say, oh, it only applies to this. Or it only applies to that. Yeah? But what don't they want to see? What don't they want to admit? They don't want to admit there's a spiritual world. And that there's something else going on. Because by definition, what does that do? By definition, what that's going to do is it's going to make a person aware that there's something else going on. There's a higher being. There's a real purpose in the world, not what I'm going through. There's a real purpose. There are things I might be obligated in doing. And for a lot of people in this world, what don't they want to do more than anything else? They do not want to change. In no way, shape, or form do they want to change. As one intellectually honest person told me, probably the only intellectually honest person I met in the last 30 years, said is married to a non-Jew. If I look into Judaism and I find out it's true and I have to change, I'm not willing to change. So that person, 100%, was being honest. Yeah. He's not giving me Webster's 8th definition, 9th definition, 500 definition of why the Torah is not true and why I don't have to keep it and this and that. He says, if I find out it's true, I'm not willing to change. And most people don't care if it's true or not. Why don't they care? Why don't they care? Because this is Moreno Verbeno, the Eitzar. What does the Eitzar say? If you look into it, you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose your family. They're going to think you're nuts. They're going to think you're brainwashed. They're going to think a million and a half different things. They don't want to change. Right? So they come up with things that don't make sense, that no one in their right mind would ever believe in. But they're going to grasp for straws in order to say, I don't have to keep it. Or some people will say, it doesn't matter. You can prove to me it's true, right? You 100% can prove it's true. So if you prove it's true, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because who says your way of life is right? Maybe the Buddhists have it right. Maybe the monks have it right. Maybe, who knows? Right? But that's not the discussion here. Right? That's not what you're arguing about. Right? You know, how do I know it's true? Okay, you want to have a discussion? Why I think the Torah is true and all these other religions are false? No. They won't even get in the discussion. Because what if there's a chance, a infinitesimally small chance you might be right? They don't want the repercussions. Yeah? They are not, they're going to look themselves in the eye and say, I'm dead now. Because if I change, I'm not going to have a spouse. My kids are going to think I'm off my rocker. They stand to lose everything. So they can blow it off and say, oh, I don't think this, or I don't think that, or I don't think the other thing. But that's not the issue. That's not the issue. And some will say, even if you could prove it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Why does it matter? Yeah, because I'm not going to change. Okay. Right? Now, does that make any sense? So that makes perfect sense. Because they don't want to change. So, so it's like, okay, I'm going to give you this argument. Ready? You ready to listen? And they start screaming. They start screaming, like, they start screaming their brains out. I said, let me just give over the information. They start screaming. Why are they screaming? They don't hear it. They have no interest in hearing it. Right? But it's a foolish argument. Yeah, it's a very foolish argument. They'll say, I don't care if you're right. I don't care if you can prove it. What do you mean? If I can prove it, let's say, and Torah can't be proven 100%, right? It's not going to be proven 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt. Okay, that might be true. But if not, if it makes enough sense, what is that going to do? That's going to make you change. And there are tens of thousands of people out there don't want to change. They're not interested in change. But the whole thing is moot. It's a stupid argument. People say, even if you can prove it, and if I could prove it, I'm not going to change. It's a stupid argument. That's not being intellectually honest. Yeah? They're not saying you can't prove it. They're saying, I don't care if you can prove it. Because it doesn't affect my life. It's not an important thing in my life. Okay. But if I could prove it, it could be an important thing in your life. 100%. But what don't they want? They don't want to change. It's not about logic. Logic goes out the window. Yeah. They don't want to look like me. They don't want to be fanatic. They don't want to be a fanatic. They want to light the Hanukkah menorah, maybe have a couple donuts, have a latke or two, and that's it. It doesn't matter if they make the right blessing. It doesn't matter if they make the right blessing. It's a thought that counts, right? The cardiac Jew, right? Right here in my heart, right here. Means nothing. Well, what do they want? They want the best of both worlds. They want to be able to keep whatever they keep or not keep. They don't want the repercussions, and they don't care. They just want to do what they want to do. But it's not Judaism. It's nothing. It's quote unquote Judaism made up in my own minds. Judaism in my heart. Okay. So you do what you want. It's your choice. But as we said before, what am I looking for? What am I living for? Yeah, and what's the ultimate we're living for? The most important thing beyond the shadow of a doubt is my relationship to God and what I'm supposed to do and what my obligations are. That's the point of life. To get as close to God as possible. Oh, someone's going to say, you know what? It's not so easy. Good. There are trials and tribulations. Yes. Trials about a hardship, right? That doesn't negate the problem, right? It makes it harder. That's true. Some people say it makes it impossible. Okay. But you're in this world to toil. That's exactly what the Ramchal says. It's not supposed to be. Imagine, person, let's say, not so good at math, right? You do these word problems. People hate word problems, right? They got to take, what you learned, whatever it is, and apply it. Now you have to apply it. So imagine you spend some time working on it. You understood it, you applied it. It was hard for you, but after a certain amount of time, you got the right answer. What does that do for a person? Gives them a lot of self-esteem. They say, look, I can do it. It wasn't easy. It didn't come easy to them. Now, let's say they had a very hard time. And then they had to get help, and someone had to show them, tell them how to look at it and different things. But eventually they got the right answer. Is it satisfactory? Maybe less. They're happy they got the right answer. But what's the question? I remember I was in sixth grade, and people ask, what does that have to do with real life? What does doing algebra or whatever have to do with real life? Now, there are things out there you can figure out, and you would need an algebraic equation to figure out, right? How many miles per gallon or liters to kilometers? Yeah, let's say. Yeah, it's an algebraic equation, right? But I remember a lot of times kids would ask, well, this is not going to help me in life at all, and whatever the teacher said, he said, or she said. Yeah, some things are practical. Could be maybe a lot of things that are practical. And what the answer is, you got to learn it anyway. Doesn't matter. Even if it's not practical. So, I'm going to keep you, we're not going to feel necessarily, I mean, you're young also, but, you're going to feel like you're going through these exercises and you're doing these things because that's what school tells you have to do. Okay, and if you don't do it, you're not going to pass, and that's bad. Well, but what happens over here? What happens over here? You do it. Even if it has no purpose. Even seemingly it has no purpose. Yeah, but life has that purpose. And the problem today, the problem is we don't see the purpose. Why don't we see the purpose? Because life is hard. Life seems impossible. It's a lot of suffering, as the Ramchal says. So we have to be able to see the bigger pictures, we always say. Okay. But sometimes seeing the bigger pictures is painful. People go through pain. People go through hardship. Right? That's the question. If God is all good, why do people suffer? Good. It's an age-old question. But at the end of the day, most people would say whatever trial they've gone through, even if they had a lot of difficulty going through it, it forms who they are, for better or for worse. Let's say for better. So they will say, it made me who I am. It changed who I am. Yeah, totally changed who you are. Very good. But you're going to say, I had to dig deep within. I had a tremendous amount of hardship, and, it wasn't easy. Okay. But did it form who you are today? Did it make you who you are today? What's the answer? Yes. Would you have been the same person had you not gone through it? Yes. You would not have been the same person, right? Does a person have the choice? Not necessarily, right? You don't have that choice. Most people would say, though, I would rather have not gone through it. But the fact I had to go through it changed who I am. Okay. So we say every day in the morning, God should never bring me to trials and tribulations. But see, there's a catch-22. The catch-22 is that if you don't have trials and tribulations, you don't grow. Right? You don't grow in spiritual terms. So now the simple answer is I have to go through them. Right? We don't want to get broken by them. It really will determine who we become in many ways. But these are things that are hard for a person to fathom, right? That it's all part of the process. It's all part of the process. Because the person makes one fundamental mistake. And the fundamental mistake is, if I do what God says, I keep it to the best of my ability, and I'm working hard, everything should be good. So then why do you have trials? Yeah? But even if a person changes their mentality, now a person has to realize things that look good may end up bad. Things that are bad may end up good. Okay. But where does the change of the mentality come? That even if it's hard, I got to see what the good is. See, Nachum Ish Gamzu, the Rebbe of Rebbe Akiva, was on a much higher level. Rebbe Akiva said, Kol David Rachmanu L'Toiv. Everything that God does is good. Nachum Ish Gamzu said, Gamzu L'Toiva. He said everything is good. Yeah. Now Nachum Ish Gamzu was a paraplegic, had sores all over his body, lived in a hovel. So it's hard to imagine. Right? He said everything is good. How's everything good? Yeah, it's paraplegic. He's got things all over his body. Right? He's got all things all over his body. He's living in a hovel. Doesn't have very much. You have to look at anything as bad. Yeah. Now, there are people that live that mantra. For other people, they can't say that. Right? They have very hard time saying that. Right? The whole time famously said that people look at things as being bad. He said it's a mistake because nothing bad comes out of heaven. You say nothing bad comes out of heaven. Why am I going through this, going through that? He says it's our perception. It's how we view it, not the way it actually is. Because there are things that, quote unquote, may look bad, but you know what? It may end up saving your life someday. Or may help you in other things. You don't see it that way right now. And you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But remember, when the days are the darkest, at the end of the day is the light at the end of the tunnel. When? Can't answer. But when doors shut, other doors open. Yeah, and I've seen it in my life, I've seen it in other people's lives. Even when it's very, very dark, doors can and will be opened. But there are 1.5 million things to be thankful for, and that's the hardship. That's exactly the hardship. The hardship is to thank God even when things are hard. But that's to say, like, nothing is ever good. Yeah? You have your health. That's not good. Saw someone right before Shabbos, a friend of mine. He's been struggling for the last 2 years. Had hip problems, leg problems, foot problem now. Can't walk. Right? Can't walk. Not significantly older than me. Cannot walk. What do you mean he'll never walk? That's serious problems. Serious physical ailments. He's got other things that he doesn't have, he doesn't have problems with. Okay, this is a major thing. It's been this way for the last couple of years. Now, a person will say, okay, I don't have that. You can walk around, you have no problems. Right? Let's say. Or even if you have minimal pain, whatever it is. Let's say you have no pain. Everything's good, you can walk. Now, is this going to make a person sing and dance because this other person can't walk? No. Why not? Because they don't care. They say, so what? So what? I can walk. So what? I don't have back pain. So what if I don't have this or that or the other thing? Any other physical ailments? And these are the problems. Very good. Yeah, but you have to appreciate what you have also. Right? If a person would look at the cup as half full and not half empty, and we fetch all the time about all kinds of things, we forget the most important thing. Yeah, we forget the most important thing. How can a person forget that? Many times during the week, I will see people that are blind try and navigate the streets and buses and different things. It's a reminder. It's an absolute reminder. You're not blind. It's not yet, let's say. Yeah. How can a person not be thankful for their sight? Yeah. How can you not be thankful for your sight? But what was the point of people that complain? What was the whole point? The point was that we don't realize what we do have. We don't focus on the positive. We're very, very good, extremely good at focusing on what? On the negative. We're not satisfied with what we have. You got to think, I don't care if I'm not blind. I don't care if I'm not deaf. I don't have any health issues. I got these issues. Okay. Everyone has something to go through. Very good. But even if you have something to go through, why can't a person put that in perspective and think about the good that they have? Why is it just about the negative? Right? What's the answer? What's the answer? Because we're only happy with things until we don't have them. And that should never be that way. I remember, when I was younger, I used to, hang out with a lot of adults when I was much younger. And people would say, you don't have your health, you don't have anything. And to a certain extent, that's true. Can't get around as much. It's more difficult. They have other issues. Okay. Does that negate the fact, let's say a person has a loving spouse, kids, that negates all that? It doesn't negate it. There are different things, but why can't a person take advantage of what they do have? Instead of looking at the negative, because that's what we do. That's the nature of man, is to focus on what's hard. You have to focus on that to get over things. Okay. But it doesn't mean you focus on that to the extent that nothing else is good. That you throw everything else away. Because there are 1.5 million things to be thankful for. 1.5 million things. But we only focus on what is troubling us, and what is hard, and what seems impossible. That's what we focus on. The focus has to be on the goods. The difficult things, everyone has them. Everybody has them. Right? So to focus on it, yeah, you got to deal with it. And it's hard. But why does that offset? Yeah. Why does it offset the other things that a person has that are goods? Yeah. What's the answer? What's the obvious answer? Because you don't think about the good. Because your mindset is focusing on that which is negative. There are people out there that are upbeat. Yeah. That they are upbeat and they're like singing and dancing all the time, whatever. Does that mean their life is easy? No. Right? It means they don't lose their focus. Because people say, well, if God is all good, I shouldn't have hardship. Not true. Definitely not true. Everybody has. Nobody that doesn't. Some have it harder in some ways. Some have it, easier in other ways. Whatever it is. Everyone's got their hardship. But the hardship and the thing to live with is that the hardship is not something that negates the good. It doesn't offset. Since I have, 20, 30, 50 things that are much harder than that which is good, it means the good is gone. It means I have no good. It's not true. Definitely not true. But we lose focus. Why do we lose focus? Because it's easier to fetch. It's easier to complain, about things that we don't have. Or things that we should have. Or things that we think we deserve. Well, if you don't have it, God doesn't want you to have it. Or you don't deserve it. Yeah? Why is it, why does this person have this? I'm much more qualified than that. Maybe you are. Why does God not want you to have it? Don't know. Maybe it's bad for you. Right? One of the things we pray for is Shemona Esrei, silent meditation, whatever you want to call it, right? When it comes to livelihood, right? We say the word has to do with like, crops. That's, back in their time, life was dependent on, on agriculture. But it talks over there about plenty and plenty not necessarily being good. Why? We see why, because the more a person has, the more they want it. It affects them, right? You say, how can plenty not be good? It depends how you use it. We said before, 1 in 1,000 rich people go to paradise. 1 in 1,000. Not saying we should, pray to be poor. Not saying that, right? You have to know how to use it. It's a test. It's a test like anything else. Yeah. So a lot of it has to do with the way I look at the world. Yeah, and it's not about what someone else has and what I don't have, because it's very easy to say, oh, but I don't have this. And what this other person has and this and that, right? They seem to have much easier. Look what they're doing, and they're the perfect kids. They have this, keep in mind one thing. One thing. Whatever we see out there, we have no idea what we're looking at. Person may have like picture image of what you think life should be and what we should have, and you have no idea whatsoever. Let's say, I'll make it easy. You have no idea whatsoever going on in the private life. This guy looks all put together. He's got money. He's got the perfect spouse. Who knows if he's not, henpecked by his wife all the time? If she's complaining and saying, I want this, you don't do this enough, and whatever. She nitpicks. Yeah, she nitpicks. You get the perfect life. He gets butchered every time he shuts the door. Butchered. You don't know that. You have no idea. You have no idea. Yeah. We always see externals, right? What we said before, the Torah always comes, to repeat itself in different ways, right? What we see, we don't understand. Externals don't mean anything in general. What a person sees, you don't know what's going on. You have no idea what's going on. But we perceive as, oh, the person has this, and the person has that, and what the person does with this. But you can have a totally miserable life in other ways. Right? We don't know. We're very quick to judge. Right? So, well, what's the bottom line over here? Bottom line over here is you got to see what's in front of you. And you have to learn to appreciate what you do have. Not just the hardship. The hardship you have to get over. The hardship you have to deal with. Okay. Right? And everyone's going to have it. Right? Each person will have different things. Some more, some less, doesn't matter. Right? The fundamental thing is to be able to see the good. And there's more good than a person thinks. Right? Yeah, I'm just using one example. One example of health. A person's livelihood could be like, it could be up and down. They could be, in serious trouble in some ways, whatever. You don't have tremendous hardship that way. But they don't have health issues. At least not at the moment. Right? Or say it's reversed. Say you had health issues, but he had health issues, but livelihood is good. So you say, well, what's worth the money? I can't walk. Well, I think this guy, let's say, this guy I was talking about, let's say, let's say he doesn't have any livelihood issues, right? Let's say livelihood issues is not a problem. But he can't walk. He's in pain. So Kaufman would say, pick your poison. What'd you rather have? I'd rather have livelihood, good livelihood, and health. Okay, you can't be a pig. You don't get both. You don't necessarily get both. Some people do, whatever. Yeah? So on the one hand, you got someone who's got livelihood but has health issues. And someone's got health issues and not livelihood issues. Okay. So what do you choose? People choose different things. But you don't say given that choice. What's the choice you're given? The choice you're given is how I look at the situation. That's the choice. So a person can say, a person can look at it in a positive way or negative way. Yeah? Depends how you want to look at it. Now, can sometimes you get beaten down in life? Sure. Sometimes a lot of things go wrong? Absolutely. What's my mentality, though? Is it really that bad? I had something last week, whatever. Things started off bad. I was like, okay, is this the way the day's going to go? And things perked up in other ways. Okay. Because it starts out bad doesn't mean it's going to stay bad. Sometimes it will. You say, okay, if this went wrong, then something else is going to go wrong and something else is going to snowball. Well, hopefully it doesn't happen. Right? But sometimes we're pleasantly surprised. Even things start out, let's say, not the way we want, and then turn out differently. Or let's say better. Let's say things turn out great. Things are going great. And then all of a sudden something happens. So you think, okay, the rest of the day is going to go. You have no idea. Right? But what are we in control of? We're in control of the way we look at it. That's the way we're in control. Yeah? But it's hard. You got to process it. You got to work on it. You got to, there's a lot to do over here. Right? But we have to change. And the way I said very simply, how to look in the world, that had to change. Right? To go, in school, to go to college, to go to university, to make money, and this, and you're going to retire, see the world. That mentality had to change because that's not reality. I mean, that is reality, how some people would look at it, but that's not the reality. That is not the reality. The reality is what I do, how I interact with others, right? That's the reality, but I take the tone I put into my life. Now, does it always go the way we want? Never. A lot of times it doesn't go the way we want. But I have to change the way we think. That's what we have to do. So when I came to this conclusion, I said, I have to see how the other side lives. I have to see what Orthodox Judaism is. Because this doesn't work. This is a serious problem. Right? The way I saw it, in a very simplistic way. That can't be what life's all about. I didn't know anything about the Ramchal back then. Yeah, if I would have known, that would answer my question in 3 seconds. Okay, you learn it. Sometimes you learn it the hard way, sometimes it takes a lot longer. Okay. But I got the message. I got the message later. But I thought there was something wrong with me. I mean, still may be something wrong with me, right? But I came to the conclusion that the world has to be cracked. That the world as we see it doesn't make any sense, right? That was my conclusion. Either the world doesn't make sense or I have to see a shrink or both. I said, I have to see how the other side lives. And that was it. Once I went to yeshiva, within 2 weeks, most of my questions were answered. Based on basic Jewish texts. You say, but you had to wait so long and go through so many things? Okay, God has his ways. You open up yourself, you say, okay, I want answers, I want definitions, I want this. God's okay. I'm going to put you in contact with someone who's going to tell you to go to yeshiva. Okay. Yeah, you want to go in the right way, God will help you. You want to go in the wrong path, God won't stop you. Very good. That answered so many questions. An unbelievable amount of questions. I said, but I had to wait so long to get the answers? Could be I wasn't ready for the answers. Could be I wouldn't have listened. I don't know. It could have been any number of things, right? But at the end of the day, when you look back, we like to play Monday morning quarterback. What happens when you look back? You see things very differently, right? A lot of times you'll see things very differently. Why will you see it differently? Because now you're loaded with a lot more knowledge, with different knowledge. Now, with that different knowledge, you say, oh, this person is this person is that. Okay, but now I have a way to look at it. I have a way to analyze it. I have a much deeper way. Might need, a person might need therapy and other things. Okay. On a Torah level, I can understand it in a totally different way. And look at it in a totally different way. The whole different ball wax. Now, is that going to uproot everything that someone, potentially did and this and that, or a person was bullied and other things? No. It's not going to answer them. And a person may have insecurities and other things they have to work on. Okay. But when you understand, you take someone like who said things or whatever, and this person has the IQ of a doorknob, in my language, they have a 25 IQ, and you look back and you say, okay, let's say we're going to go through, you got to go through therapy and you're going to go back and relive the situation. Yeah. And what the person said, you're going to say, okay, stop that frame. Now you look at the person and they say, you know what? I think you're a piece of dirt and this and that because of whatever. And now a person's hurt. They feel the pain again. They feel their heart being ripped out. Yeah. But they stop and now they say, wait a minute. I have a different level of knowledge. What the person is saying and doing is cruel, right? And it's mean, right? Yeah. And then you look at the person and you see them with a different face. How do you see them with a different face? Imagine how somebody looks when they have dementia, when they have Alzheimer's. Yeah, they look at you, they don't know you, they don't recognize you. Or even better, you put a face on them like they're Down syndrome. Yeah, they don't have brain capacity, most of them. Some do, some have greater capacity. Okay. Now, when you're living that moment and you're going through the pain, right, and you're feeling the pain, and you're feeling, you know, the proverbial smack upside the head of what the person says. And then you look at them like they're being taken away in a straitjacket because the person's just the absolute buffoon and an absolute ignoramus. Some people say this is not going to help. It's still painful. Okay. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not playing one on TV either. But if you play, again, it's going to be hard to do this. It's going to be very hard to do this. But imagine if you could do this. And someone came up and said, oh, you're worthless. You're not, you're this and you're that and you're the thing. It's devastating. I'm not saying a person can get over this. Yeah. But imagine if you could do this. And you stop the frame in your mind. You're going through all the pain. You're going through, all the thoughts, what the person's done. And let's say they embarrassed you in public, all these things. You stop the frame. And then you say, okay, what's the bigger picture here? What's the message? Yeah? And the message is this person's a deranged lunatic. They're a lunatic. They don't know what they're doing. Yeah? Now you say they're making fun and they're saying things and they know how, they know how to turn the screw, so to speak. Okay. Yeah. And it's still painful and maybe it's unbearable for a person to think this way. Okay. Again, psychologists may totally disagree with me, right? Well, let's hear it out. Let's play it out. You're able to do that, let's say. Then at that split second before you feel totally mortalized, and that you feel like, you're going to burst and you can't take it, whatever it is. What do you do? What do? You stop the frame, right? You got the frame stopped. Then I start pouring in all the wisdom, right? I start remembering all these things. And then you look at the person. You're going to say, you're looking at me as like I'm this or I'm that, right? And you have the status of a 5-year-old. I'm even going to let my heart get upset because you're saying something, okay, it's well below the bounds. It shouldn't be said. They totally demolish you. They say, you know what? Who cares what your opinion is? Nobody cares what your opinion is. Your opinion is worthless to us. Very cruel. Very, very cruel. Yeah. Now that's painful. Now imagine if a person, I'm not saying a person can do this. Let's say a person can do this. They stop the frame right there. You're upset. You're enraged. Right? You want to take an axe and grind this person to shreds. Yeah. You want to smack them, but you can't. Right? And you're feeling all the pain. You're feeling the embarrassment, all the emotion. Imagine if you could do this. And now you start to remember, what's my purpose in life? What's the bigger picture? Why is God sending this person to me? Yeah, it's already in the past. Okay. We relive the past many times. But imagine if a person can look at that person like an absolute buffoon. You look at them like they're in a clown suit, right? Or I even get one example. One example. Yeah. Whenever watched the Brady Bunch back in the day, someone's getting their driver's license, yeah, and they're like totally nervous, right? They failed the test the first time, totally nervous. So someone gave them advice. Someone gave them advice. What was the advice? The advice is you look at the person testing you, and they're intimidating, right? Because they can either say yay or nay, like you're going to get your license or not. So what did someone give them? Great piece of advice. The great piece of advice was look at the person, even if it's so intimidating. Again, it's a bad example, but I'm going to mention it anyway. Look at the person, look at them like they're so, they're very intimidating. And look at them like they're in the boxers. They're wearing like a t-shirt and boxer shorts. Now, what was the purpose of that? totally broke the ice. Now, so they changed the picture. Change the picture. Person looks at this person, and now it's like in his pajamas. Looks at his pajamas. So what does the person do? They burst out laughing, right? It calms them down. They drive and they pass the test. Okay, that's a little bit simplistic, right? Maybe overly simplistic, right? But anyway, what's the parable here? They stopped at that split second and looked at the person totally differently. They didn't look as like they have the power to fail them. They're like an ogre standing over them. They're gonna they're gonna try and get them on every little thing that they do, right, etc. That they're not gonna pass, and they have the choice to say yay or nay. They have a position of power. Very good. Yeah, so it's nerve-wracking. Tremendously nerve-wracking. Yeah, and they're afraid to do anything. If they do the wrong thing, slightest thing, they're gonna fail. So what do they do to break the ice? They look at the person like they're in their underwear. So again, easier said than done. Very overly simplistic, I would agree. But what did that do? What did that do? If you want to dig a little bit deeper here, according to Torah, what did that do? They saw the bigger picture. They saw, okay, this person has the power to do that. Yeah, but if I look at them in a different way, it's not going to affect me. I'm not going to be affected and be intimidated. So what did they do? They changed the person's persona. They put them in their underwear, right? So again, you got to say that doesn't work over here because the person said it, the damage was done. Okay, yeah. But if you had time to, if a person could do this, and maybe psychologists disagree with me, okay, it's going to be a very hard thing to do. But imagine at that point, you're playing it back in your mind. You're playing with all the pain, with all the emotion, yeah? And now, you're enraged or you're just like feel belittled and whatever it is. So now you're looking at that person with all the rage and all the anger years later. Okay, I can understand. Makes perfect sense. They belittle, they do things, they destroy self-esteem. Very good. Yeah? I mean, not so good. Whatever. Right? So what happens? What happens? You play that back in your mind. It's painful. It's extremely painful. You play that back in your mind. Yeah? And then you look then you stop the frame. They say it, they look like Freddy Krueger. They look like, I don't know, they look like Jason, Friday the 13th. I don't know. Right? Right? So either you can laugh, you can cry, or be intimidated. Right? But if a person now has different knowledge, again, I'm not going to say it's going to work, but I'm just saying, if a person had different knowledge and they look at this person now like an absolute imbecile, like like a 2-year-old, imagine this person now in diapers. Be pretty funny, actually. Yeah, imagine them in diapers with a 2-year-old kid, with a 2-year-old face. Maybe like they get all kinds of stuff all over their face and they're dirty and whatever. Because they're 2 years old. That's what 2-year-olds do. Okay. So now I look at them as a 2-year-old. And they're saying the same thing. Same exact thing. So I have a different mentality the way I'm looking at it. Is that going to change it? Some people say no. Okay. But if I have the wisdom now, and I see it that way, and I see this person's an absolute imbecile, like a 2-year-old, right? Someone will say this thing is still there. Okay. I'm not going to say it's going to go away straight away. Yeah, but when you take that down a level, or 2 levels, or 20 levels, and you look at this person like a 2-year-old, and they act like a 2-year-old, and they're ranting and raving like a 2-year-old, you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. But it's easier said than done. I'm just pointing out, it's easier said than done when the damage has already been done, right? But if a person has knowledge, you got to try and work that through. I'm not saying person doesn't need therapy, maybe strong therapy, whatever. What would a therapist do? They say, okay, think about the situation you're in. Think about this. How are we going to react? Why did they do it? What happened? It's going to be very hard to go through. Very, very hard to go through. But, I understand, this is part of the test, and this is what they want from me and whatever. Okay. Yeah, personally, I was destroyed by it. Right? And we all have that people. We're bullied people. Other things. Very good. Someone went through it. Yeah. They don't forgive them for what they did. Okay. I'm not saying you have to forgive them. Yeah. Yeah. But if you understand God's using them to get to you, okay, you can say why? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. But if I see it in a different way, perhaps when I see the bigger picture, what does it do? It takes away a lot of the pain, or takes away some of the pain. Right? I'm not gonna say it's gonna be an easy thing to do. Right? But when I have a different set mentality, so again, for certain things, it's gonna be very hard to do. It's gonna be very hard to do. Psychologists probably destroy me on this. Yeah, it's gonna be very hard to do. But the point is, if I have knowledge, and I can apply that knowledge, I can try and work through it. You might need therapy for it, okay. But if I can try and work through it and see, and what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to gain or not gain or whatever, but see in a totally different perspective, the way the Torah wants. Again, I'm not gonna say it's gonna erase it 100%. Oh, if I would, right? But I can tell you, I haven't done that in my own life, but what I've done is that, certain people are gonna say certain things, I'm not gonna worry about it. Even if it's mean, even if it's cruel. And it's like, nobody cares what you have to say. It doesn't matter. Isn't that mean? So I was gonna say for your class, I'm not gonna listen. Like you're nothing. Okay. Yeah. I'm not looking at this person in diapers, but I'm looking at this person like you have the education of a 5-year-old. Yeah. Why am I gonna get upset by what you say? And they're trying to get under your skin. Why would I get upset by it? I said, I use it in a different way, right? I use it a different way, project it in a different way. So people can understand, what they said was mean, what they said is cruel, 100%. Anyone want to hear what you say doesn't matter? Your existence doesn't matter? Nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. Yeah. But if the person themselves, if you look at the person like they're just an absolute doofus, with a capital D, and they say things or whatever, or I care. You can say that's cruel and it's mean. You're right. Yeah, it's cruel. 100%. And they're trying to get you and knock you down and this and that. True. 100% true. Yeah. They may be annoying, but I'm not going to be annoyed by, you might get annoyed by an imbecile. Yeah. You might get annoyed by an imbecile. Okay. I've learned over the years, you go, think. You don't take it to heart because they're an imbecile. They're an imbecile. Now, something's done 25 years before, right? And a person still feels the pain. I get it. I get it. It's painful. Doesn't mean you have to forgive them. Yeah. It's all part of the test. Isn't the person an imbecile? Aren't they an imbecile? They're animals. Yeah. They're animals. Doesn't mean the pain 100% goes away. It just means I change my mentality. All right, I'm going to stop there. I do this every Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Kaufman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com. Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There you got videos of Q&As. And thanks for my fathers, Book of Leviticus. Want to send me an email? RabbiChaimKaufman@gmail.com, RBBIChaimCoffman @gmail.com, whichever good. Beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day.